guys, it's Miss Krista. Welcome back to Kids Worship for today. We are going to be talking today about stories. So I thought to warm up, we'd play a little game to see if you guys can name the story. I'm going to read a line or two from a popular children's book, and you guys keep track and see how many you can get right. There's five books and then a bonus one. So here we go. I'll read the lines and you guys see if you can guess what it is. First one. I am Sam. Sam, I am. So if you guys know what that's from, if you said green eggs and ham, you are right. All right, number two. These are going to get probably a little bit harder as we go along, but here we go. Number two. In the light of the moon, a little egg lay on a leaf. One Sunday morning, the warm sun came up and pop, out of the egg came, do you know what that one is? Very hungry caterpillar. See if you got that one right. You could be 2 out of 2 right now. All right, let's go on. Number 3. This one isn't from quite the very beginning of the story. See if you can get this one. It could be his head wasn't screwed on just right. It could be, perhaps, that his shoes were too tight. But I think that the most likely reason of all may have been that his heart was 2 sizes too small. Probably sounds familiar. Can you remember what it's from? How the Grinch Stole Christmas. All right, number 4. This is also going to be from kind of the middle of the story. All at once, he saw something small and round. "Why, here's my button," he cried, and he tried to pick it up. But like all the other buttons on the mattress, it was tied down tight. You know what that one's from? About a little bear who lost his button from corduroy. All right, last one before the bonus question. This is from the end of the story, okay, this time? And when he heard that, the swan knew that it was worth having undergone all the suffering and loneliness that he had. Otherwise, he would never have known what it was to be really happy. So a story about a swan. It is from The Ugly Duckling. All right, and now for the bonus. This one I chose. This one's a little bit harder, but is one of my favorite opening lines of any book. So, very beginning of the book starts like this. There was a boy called Eustace Clarence Scrubb, and he almost deserved it. And that is from, if you know it for the bonus point, that is from The Voyage of the Dawn Treader by C.S. Lewis. All right, so 5 out of 5, maybe a bonus point if you want to. If you can, comment your score if you want. But that's what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about stories. And a lot of these, some of you may not have heard them for years, but you still remember them. Or maybe it's something that your parents read to you over and over and over again. Parents, maybe you remember them from reading them over and over again to your kids. But stories stick with us. And so when we come back, we'll do the worship song, and then we'll come back and talk a little bit more about Paul and his story that he had to tell. All right, see you in a bit.
Praise God from whom all blessings flow. Praise Him, all creatures here below. Praise Him above, ye heavenly hosts. Praise Father, Son, and Holy Ghost.
Hi guys, welcome back. Okay, so we're going to be talking about Paul and his story. So we've been learning a little bit about Paul over the past few weeks. We learned that first he didn't follow Jesus and he was trying to hurt people who did follow Jesus. And then when he was traveling on the road, there's the bright light and God spoke to him in the light saying, "Why are you persecuting me?" And Paul completely changed. God changed his heart and he changed his mind, and Paul became a follower of Jesus. And Paul started traveling, and he went to a whole bunch of cities. I'm going to list them now. Some of them, not all of them. This isn't all of them. But he went to Antioch, he went to Perga, he went to Salamis, he went to Paphos, he went to Jerusalem, he went to Damascus, Tarsus, Lystra, Iconium, Troas, Philippi, Thessalonica, Berea, Corinth, Athens, Ephesus, Tyre, and Caesarea. And all of those places he went, he was healing people, he was casting out demons. Sometimes he was beaten, sometimes he was in prison. He escaped the city in the basket, like Miss Julia told us in the story. He raised someone from the dead. And everywhere he went, Paul was telling people about Jesus. He was telling them that he had died on the cross for them and that he loved them. And some people believed what Paul was saying and believed in Jesus and started following Jesus as well. And there was a lot of churches that started from Paul's travels and telling all of these people about Jesus. And there were other people who didn't really like what Paul was saying and thought he was a troublemaker, and that's part of the reason that he got beaten and he got thrown in prison and he had to leave cities a lot of times for his own safety. So that's what he had been doing. He went on 3 different missionary trips. So he was just completing that last missionary trip, going to all those different cities, and he was headed back to Jerusalem. And people were warning him on his way back to Jerusalem. They were saying, "Don't go back there. Something bad is going to happen if you do. You're going to be imprisoned. You might be killed. Don't go back there." But Paul knew that that's where God wanted him to go. He was being obedient to God, so he headed back to Jerusalem. And while he was there, again, just like in all those other cities he went to, he was telling people about Jesus, telling them that Jesus loved them, that he had died for their sins, just like he had done in all the other cities. And in all the other cities, same thing. Some of the people believed him, and some of the people didn't and started making trouble. And that's what happened in Jerusalem. And there were some people who actually told a lie, something that wasn't even true about Paul. And they said, "Hey, he brought some people into the temple in Jerusalem who weren't supposed to be in there. They're not allowed to be in there." And Paul brought them in there, which wasn't even true. But people got upset about it because Paul broke the rules. And so they started, "Hey, why is Paul doing this?" And they're starting to kind of make a scene. And then those same people said that Paul did something else wrong, that he wasn't following the Jewish laws that he was supposed to follow. And so there got to be this crowd of people that they were saying, "Hey, he's doing this wrong stuff." And the other people were saying, "Hey, he brought these people in the temple and he wasn't supposed to." And so there got to be this crowd of people, and they were getting all excited and all upset. And actually it says in the Bible, they couldn't even figure out, the soldiers came and kind of protected Paul because they didn't even know what was happening. There wasn't a clear answer from the crowd about what Paul had done because everybody was kind of shouting something different, and it was really confusing, and they were trying to kind of get at Paul. And so there were soldiers in the city who were there acting kind of like policemen, maybe not really, but so they were protecting Paul from this crowd. And Paul said, I told the soldiers that were around him, Paul said, I want to talk to the people. And so they said, "Okay, you can do that." And the soldiers were still kind of around him, protecting him. And then Paul spoke to the people, and he spoke in their own language. And he said, "I want to tell you my story." Remember, we were talking about stories before? And so that's what Paul did. And the people heard him speak in their own language. And they listened because everybody loves a good story. It was true then, it's true now. And so Paul was able to talk to that crowd and tell them the story of how Jesus had changed his life, how he had been traveling to Damascus to put more followers of Jesus in prison, and God had met him on the way in that bright light and said, "Paul, why are you persecuting me?" And Paul was able to share his story with that crowd that were listening, that were hanging on his every word of that story, to hear about how Jesus had changed his life, how Jesus had changed his heart, and Jesus had changed his mind, and he had become a follower of Jesus. the Bible tells us that just like Paul had his story to share with that crowd and all those people in all those cities he went to visit, we also have a story to tell about how Jesus has changed our hearts and our minds. In the book of Psalms, chapter 107, verse 2, it says, "Let those who have been set free by the Lord tell their story." So remember that you have a story to tell too. And people always love to listen to a good story. All right, that's it for this week. Thanks for joining. We'll see you again next week.